Hey there, Maria Romano here with From Love to Legacy. Because love, leadership, and growth aren't separate, they're connected. Here, we focus on building businesses, relationships, and lives with impact.
If you want better results, stronger relationships, and a legacy that lasts, you're in the right place. Welcome to From Love to Legacy with Maria Romano, where leadership and real-world results meet human connection. Because how you lead and how you love today becomes the legacy you leave tomorrow.
Hey there, everybody. Welcome to my first 2026, where I have another guest on with my podcast. Here I am, Maria Romano, and you know me from True Love Knots, which has not gone away, but I sort of changed the podcast to Love and Legacy. We're still having that love component, but what legacy, what type of legacy are we trickling throughout the world? So I'm excited to bring my first guest, and she is awesome, all the way from Las Vegas, Nevada, just like me. I have Kate Swick here, who is a feng shui expert and astrologer, and we're going to dive a little bit into feng shui and how it pertains to business, to your office. So let me just share a little bit about Kate. So let me see if I can read this from one side to another. So Kate, as I said, she's an astrologer and tarot reader and feng shui consultant. I say she's an expert. Oh. And she's known for translating complex cosmic cycles into grounded real world insight. She specializes in high-end events and private sessions. Her insights help customers and clients navigate change with clarity and a sense of meaning. And that is so important. So welcome, Kate.
Yeah.
I put on my best cologne for you.
Oh, I love it.
Okay. So, Kate, a little bit, I've known you for years. Just a little background, everybody. I met Kate when she was 9. Obviously evolved.
6.
With my daughter, and she went to the same school in Las Vegas. For any of you that are out there from Same Fighters, shout out to them.
Yes.
And I met her mom, and her mom had started at that time. She was starting to do astrology. And at that time, people thought it was woo-woo. And it ain't woo-woo anymore, because people that are very well known, whether they're in entertainment, they're in the public world, they run companies, they're in politics, they all use astrology and feng shui. And that's why I brought Kate. So Kate, share a little bit about you and about what you actually do and how you help your clients.
Absolutely. So, I'm a full-time astrologer and tarot reader and feng shui consultant, and it is comprised of one-on-one clients. And then, of course, I do work in the corporate world as well. But, you made such a great point that it's not just for, the little teenage girl in her room reading the Cosmo magazine. People that run companies, people that have, a lot of money, they kind of invest in these practices to give them insight and validation for what's going on. The astrology is great for predicting life cycles. And, many times I take clients back. Okay, what happened in 1985? What happened in 2018? To reflect on lived experiences and understand that these are just cycles and patterns that we go through. And when we have, maybe just the foresight of this is coming, it puts you in a better position. So you're not blindsided by the energy. How can I lean into this and make it work for me in the best way possible? And even with the feng shui, the idea of going into homes, going into businesses to make sure that the space is reflecting what you're trying to create.
And, it's an interesting point, because most people, we want to hear about ourselves, but we don't recognize that our environment that we live in is very important. And when it comes to those of you that are out there that maybe are officing back in the real world, or you're, working remotely, you're spending a lot of time in your environment. So tell me a bit about, so if somebody walked into an office, okay, right now, and business sort of felt stuck, I know sometimes it's like, my head got 50 million things. Where do I start? What do you think that sometimes is? And I know you don't have a room in front of you, but you've seen enough clients.
Yeah, well, this might just sound too obvious, but when you say if a client was feeling stuck, I might say, where is the stagnant energy in the office? Maybe there's too much heavy furniture. It's really hard to move a piece of furniture, too much heavy furniture. Maybe there's stacks of paperwork, so there can be a lot of clutter in the area. And even when we think of stagnant energy, I want you to think of something simplistic like old certificates, right? I worked with this one client and he had not received any recent awards or validation for his work. And behind him plastered all of these awards that he's had, but I was looking at the date, it was like, oh, 1997, 2000. And I thought, well, the universe maybe doesn't know that you need a new award. Your walls are, I'm going to use the word cluttered. It was nicely done, but your walls are cluttered with all of your old awards. Why don't we start taking down some of those older ones to make room for this new energy? So it's always about getting rid of the old. I know it sounds so simplistic and you might think, who hasn't heard of that? Get rid of the old. But it is it's really one of the staples of feng shui of the space needs to be reflective of where we want to go. It can't just be where we've been. And that can pull us into that stagnant energy.
That's interesting, where you want to go. I think that's the key thing. And when you say that, if somebody, because again, a layperson might not be aware of this, okay? Because, there are always people that feel so confident, and I mean, maybe that is their positioning of their furniture or what they have in their office. But let's just take a moment. What if you don't have control? In a cubby hole, how they have these little modules set up.
Yes.
How could somebody make that, especially when you have people around you and they're talking, and what would you suggest?
Absolutely. And that is a big one. I even see that in people's homes with maybe a husband and wife and, oh, that's my husband's stuff, so we can't touch it. So yes, we are not always going to be in complete control, but I do say really take advantage of what we do have control over. So if that's adding, maybe there's a lot of kind of toxic energy around your cubicle, and can we put a live plant in that area to symbolize growth or to symbolize breathing fresh life into the situation? I think sometimes we get stuck on the idea of like, oh, feng shui is I have to have a red door, or feng shui is my bed has to face a certain direction. While those things are important, we understand that unfortunately, the construction companies don't work always with a feng shui consultant. So maybe there might be too many windows in the bedroom, so the bed can only go on a certain way. So we have to just take control of what we can do, and not get hung up on the idea of I'm not meeting all of the feng shui principles. There's a lot of intention that goes into feng shui of what is your intention of doing this, even if it might not be textbook.
I think that's an interesting point, because you said something, you don't have all contractors and builders that are doing that. I worked with a client on different, situation. She was looking to get back in the dating world, and she actually is a very big wig at a very large hotel. And when she brings in her contractors, she also makes sure she has a feng shui expert. And then I had recommended you, and I think she called you.
Yes.
So sometimes we forget that we have to also have a feng shui expert in our personal life, especially if we have a home office there. But, talk about like energy that's draining. Okay. What can drain somebody when in an office as well? And I've had, I've taken all of your advice. So I'm the last, don't ask me, because I'm constantly walking around saying, what would Kate do in this situation? But seriously, I think that energy and clarity are the biggest thing. What can somebody do?
Yeah. Yeah. Clutter is a big draining energy. And think of, yes, we can talk about the person next to me drains me. There are a lot of outside things as well. But when we're talking specifically about the space, who doesn't love getting into a clean car? Who doesn't love walking into a clean home? Think of that mentality. You come home from work, you're in a good mood, you enter the home and you see a mess. Okay, we're automatically, the energy is being shifted. It immediately can change the mood. So especially when we're thinking of it from the office, how do we set ourselves up for success when we close out our office? So when we come in the next morning, we're energized to sit down at our desk and start working. So whether that's just a night routine of how I'm closing up the office, I'm putting the scissors away, I'm filing the paperwork away, just to allow ourselves success when we show back up.
Interesting. And I think that's true. Talk about your placement of your desk.
Yes. Yeah. So we always want to take the power position. And I do find I don't want to pick on women with this one, but it is mostly women where I see women put their desk in the corner or against the wall. And many times that has a more secretary or, they're the assistant type thing. And so with women, I say, I want you to be seated in your desk that when you look forward, you're seeing the door. And again, every house is different, so I'm not, my door is not here, my door is here, but I'm prepared. Any opportunity, anyone that's coming into the door, I'm seeing them. I would not want, my desk to be facing this way and then my back be to the door. We can think of it from a safety standpoint, right? We want to be prepared, but we also think of it from an opportunity standpoint, that we see the opportunities coming. We are in the position that no one's walking in and they're seeing my back first, that they have the upper hand because they're coming in behind me.
And that makes sense too when you think about it. We, depending upon what generation you're coming from. My generation, we do remember that secretary. We were in the corner. I think from your generation and younger, it's a completely different attitude today, and I think that makes a difference as well. So we talked about the placement of desks, but what about in a home office? What are the common mistakes? And I know because there's a lot of people still working from home or they're hybrid.
I know. And again, I understand space, so it's not to be critical of anyone, but you take, and I did it for a long time when I started my business, even though I understood these principles, you maybe don't take yourself as seriously, or there's imposter syndrome. So you work from the kitchen table, or because we all have laptops now, I work from the Starbucks, I work from the couch. And there is something that happens where you seriously level up when you start taking yourself seriously. I had 2 guest bedrooms and I finally decided, why do I need 2 guest bedrooms? They had served me. I disassembled one of the guest bedrooms and turned it into an office. And again, it's just like the confidence that I had, I have an office. I'm not mobile. So giving yourself, carving out your space, carving out yourself a set space for your work, I think is so important. I understand not everyone's going to have the ability to have a full room. But the idea of setting somewhere up that is your designated area, that maybe children can't play with their toys there, or spouse isn't disrupting that area. It's setting boundaries and borders for the business.
And that's important too, I think, when it comes to feng shui as well, setting the boundaries of not just your environment, but also the physical boundaries, especially when you are working at home and you have children at home or dogs, whatever it is. I turn my phone off if I have to, or go into airplane mode just in case, so that you can really concentrate. So a couple of things, because we do have just a little bit more time. Yeah. When, have you have any interesting stories about office and feng shui that you can think of? And I know this is putting you on the spot. If you do, I'm sure you have something. Don't use.
Oh my gosh, I have.
My office was an example. My desk was up against the wall, so I totally.
Yeah. Taking the power position. I mean, I have some very specific stories that I'm thinking of, but I'll just say this, right? And this is maybe going to kind of go into one of the other questions. Like if I had to leave people with some advice, and this is where I'll start with that. If you've ever created a vision board, if you've ever, created a bingo board, something that you're saying, like, I'm cutting out a piece of a beach because I'm setting the intention that I'm going to go to a beach. If you believe in that concept and you've done that, you do believe in feng shui, right? Because the idea is like the walls of your space are the largest vision boards that you'll ever work on. So when I go into offices and I see lots of pictures of family in the office, and again, I'm not a family hater, but it's your office and there's more pictures of family, or there's more personal items than it looks like professional items. We're sending a message of what we put priority on. So that goes into the artwork that I see in walls. I was in a space and behind the desk were these heavily suited, like in armor knights. And this was before the Vegas Golden Knights, I believe. So it wasn't a nod to hockey. It was like very medieval looking. And he was full body armor. And, I had to question, like, what is that about? And it turns out that they were in quite a few lawsuits against them. And, I had to ask, when did those pictures go up? Because to me, it looked like you're ready for a fight. You're ready to go into battle. Now that's very specific. I understand not everyone's going to have that in their office, but my point is to take a look at your artwork and what is your artwork saying?
Interesting, because a lot of people like you take strong animals, a lion,
Yes.
a tiger, right? I mean, when you think about it, it really does make a difference, especially if you're the lion.
Yes.
What does
Yeah.
that mean?
Right.
So the placement, and I think you're so right. And, it's interesting because you talk about, and your photos do make a big difference
Mhm.
as well. So if you had a small office and you were really limited, and let's say that they did have your desk, let's say you're in a module area and they had your desk in an area where they wanted everybody facing the computer screen and not necessarily having the area of being able to look out. Are there any cures?
Absolutely. I would put a small mirror. Again, I know it's the work environment, so sometimes you can't. We're not bringing in a 8 by 10 mirror, even if it's just a compact mirror that you set it to where you can think of like a rearview mirror on a car that, it gives you the upper advantage. Again, it might not be perfect, but we're setting that intention that I'm not going to be backstabbed. I'm not going to be kind of surprised. I'm not going to be cut off guard, that I can see what's coming. And that's great because especially in cubicles, we can't always, the desk formations, sometimes you can't move them.
You bring up the mirror, and I have to share this story because when your mom came to my home, is this in 2013? So listeners, seriously.
Yeah.
And the gentleman next door had a tree that was dead. So it was just a big stump of a tree. And that was there. And your mom said to me, you know what you can do? Put a mirror over there, because it's near your office and that's secure. Okay. But you know what I did? Okay.
Yeah.
This is true. I've asked him several times to do. He says, have your gardener do it. I said, no, have your gardener. It's not my tree, but it's in my area where it's my office. Thus, in November, I actually moved the mirror to where it really was an eye view. And everybody, this is so true of that. A month later, he had his gardeners down there chopping it down. I went, it worked. It worked.
Yes. Yes.
And it does. It makes a difference. So, the placement.
The placement. And you make a great point too. If your office has a mirror, are you looking at a dumpster? If you're like in a, I don't know what those complexes are called, but the big dumpster is outside your window. Are you looking at a dead tree? Are you looking at a busy intersection where you see collisions or close calls, throughout the day? Placing a mirror to kind of bounce that energy back out, right? It doesn't enter our space. It's reflected back before it gets to us. It is a great way to kind of get around some of those things that aren't as desirable.
I love that. So was there anything you'd like to leave with the listeners? Because I want them to know a little bit about you, and do you have any talks coming up or anything that they would be aware of?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I partner with the Clark County library system here in Las Vegas, and every summer I take part in their summer reading program. And this year I'm talking about the art of storytelling through tarot. Many times when someone's learning to read tarot, they understand the bullet points. Like, okay, this card is about vitality and energy and light. But then you think, well, how do I give a reading with that? That's simply just the keywords. And so I'm going to talk about how to storytell to give greater meaning to the cards. That those dates can all be found on my website.
Excellent. And of course, you are available for events as well as private read, which I know I always do the private readings at least 2 or 3 times a year, everybody. So I have to say, and it has worked for me, and I think it's important. And, those of you out there, take a moment and think about what Kate is sharing. And you might be stuck, and might not be in your business. It could be in your personal life. And maybe you need to have somebody like Kate come in and just, share with you what you can do to open up your world, because I don't care where you're at, what walks of life, we're always looking for new opportunities. We always want to breathe more life into us, because when we breathe more life, you live a better life. So anybody out there, if you know somebody that needs to hear this, please share this with somebody. That's the best thing you can do. And also, when you reach out to Kate, just let them know that you heard it on Maria's podcast. In the meantime, Kate, anything else you'd like to say before we sign off?
Oh, yeah. I think you made a good point about, if you're stuck anywhere, don't discredit just doing a small thing. Many times we think feng shui, oh, you have to come out to my house and you have to see everything. No, just intentionally, when you move something, set the intention. Why am I moving this? Setting the intention. Why am I getting rid of this? I'm getting rid of this for more opportunities. This does not have to be big scale. It can be very small. And one other point you made about feng shui, because I've heard some people say like, oh, I've had a feng shui consultation, maybe like you, like in 2013. I know you've had one since, but in 2013, we're constantly evolving. So saying I've had a feng shui consult is like saying I've had a haircut. We are constantly changing. We're constantly growing. So no, you don't have to always have me out, but the idea of because we're always changing, our space always needs to be looked at to make sure that it is in alignment with where we're going.
And you know what? That is so true. And where the alignment is of where we're going is the main thing. I so agree with you. So remember, and it doesn't have to be done in person. You can do this virtually. I wanted to add that, correct?
Correct.
So anybody listening out of state, you can send her a video. I do it.
Yeah.
Okay. And I probably don't live more than 10 miles from her. So that just depends upon schedule. So just to let everybody know, and it does and listen to her podcast. Her mom is phenomenal with her, both of them together. And they have different viewpoints too, which I love. So I listen to their podcast every week. I just started the one today, Monday, just so that, my Monday morning routine is Ed Milet motivation. And then I go on to the Mom and Me podcast. All right. In the meantime, stay healthy, happy, and safe, and spread love. Have a great day, everyone.